So big tech censorship is a topic that's been coming up a lot lately. It especially always comes up in my comments anytime I talk about my word list and what words are demonetized. And I mean, for a website like YouTube, where it seems like it's just a platform where people can upload videos about pretty much anything, it does seem like they're becoming more strict about what they're allowing on the platform. So let's just talk about what should be allowed on YouTube. Now, there's a lot of people with the view that YouTube should allow anything. Everything should be allowed. Anything goes, nothing should ever be deleted or deranked or anything like that. And while that may seem great at first, you start to realize that places with absolutely no regulations always just devolve into 4chan. I mean, 4chan is basically the most unregulated mainstream social platform. And while 4chan can be pretty entertaining sometimes, it's definitely not for everybody. So when it comes to YouTube censorship, they have a few different ways of doing that. One way that is very common is that videos will just get demonetized. I mean, if people are making YouTube videos for a living, if they make a video that's technically against the rules that YouTube has put in place, then YouTube can be like, alright, well, you're still allowed to make these videos, but you're not really going to get paid for these. And with demonetization, oftentimes, your video might get a lower view count. YouTube has kind of said that the demonetization thing does not give you a lower view count, but it's kind of just a way of covering up because the reasons they get a video demonetized are the same reasons that might get them suppressed a little bit. So I mentioned before that every video has its own rating system. So every video on this platform is rated PG or teen or mature or labeled for kids. And so one way that they can suppress videos is just have a certain category of video always be rated for mature audiences, meaning it will be recommended much less. So there's demonetization, there's view suppression, and then there's just outright deletion of channels or videos. So what are some things that kind of make sense that YouTube would not be allowing on their platform? I mean, first is a pretty obvious one, and that'd be porn. Because, I mean, once you start allowing that on the website, it kind of just takes over and it just taints the whole website. Once you start having that spreading around, it's going to make YouTube seem like a not safe for work website, and YouTube feels like they'll lose a lot of legitimacy. And I think YouTube really appreciates their whole general audience reputation, which is kind of why they're also against having, you know, like graphic and violent content. You know, the kind of stuff that would show up on LiveLeak, you know, footage of like actual accidents happening or people actually dying. So, okay, you could say that YouTube censors everything that's like sexual related or extremely graphic or violent. So, okay, YouTube wants to keep their PG reputation around. So if you're ever looking through YouTube's community guidelines of what you're allowed to post, you'll find this section right here. And so yeah, it's like no violent or graphic content or criminal organizations. Okay, that makes sense. But then you have stuff like no hate speech or harassment or cyberbullying. Like, yeah, okay, if you're doxing somebody or if you're swatting them or if you're giving out people's personal information, then that is definitely something that should not be allowed. But oftentimes they like to make rules that are just so vague, like no hate speech is allowed, which whenever anyone uses hate speech as a rule, it's usually made so vague that they can basically enforce whatever they want or not. Because even if you follow the rules and you don't break the very specific restrictions that they place, sometimes they could still just come after you if they don't like you. But one big problem that comes out of this is it's basically saying you're not allowed to criticize a lot of people. I mean, just think back to when we had stuff like Content Cop from iDubbbz, where he would basically just lay into another creator for all the crap that they've done. Well, even when iDubbbz came out and made fun of Leafy, in the same way that Leafy would make fun of other people, like YouTube later decided to just come and take the video down. And honestly, I can't really tell if YouTube likes or dislikes the drama that goes on between creators, because it obviously brings in a ton of views and a ton of money for the site, but it seems like they're trying to distance themselves from that whole side of the website. So one of the reasons that they make so many of the rules very vague is so that they can selectively enforce things. The reason that YouTube won't actually come out and tell us exactly, like, here's what you're allowed to post and here's what you're not, is because they like having that little bit of gray area. So that if you post something that they don't like, maybe it wasn't exactly against the rules that they had placed, but they could respond with, hey, we don't really like what you're saying here, so we're going to get rid of it. But then one more thing listed on here that seems very strange at the bottom is COVID-19 misinfo policy. Now, very often, whenever these big tech platforms like to ban or censor people, they use the excuse of they were spreading misinformation. And I think that this is where the censorship really becomes a problem. Because in a lot of these cases, they typically rely on some mainstream talking points. Some people, they've put all their trust into fact-checking, and they say, okay, you will create what is allowed to be said, and anybody who says the opposite of what you're saying, we will remove them. We don't want any opposing ideas showing up in this discussion. So basically they're saying you're not allowed to go against what the mainstream narrative is about COVID-19. Anything the CDC says, you're not allowed to oppose any of it. Anything the mainstream news says, you just have to go with it. You have to believe it all. And as I'm sure a lot of you remember, during 2020, they were demonetizing and censoring anyone who even talked about COVID. Like, you weren't allowed to put COVID or coronavirus or anything in your titles. You couldn't even talk about it in the videos, which only made people go around the rule by talking about the current situation or the coof. You know, it's kind of hard for millions of people to not talk about something that's affecting everyone's lives for a full year. But yet YouTube was like, nope, no talking about it. We don't want to spread any misinformation. Just trust the CDC. And you can only repeat stuff that they say. Even though whatever the CDC says will be different depending on the day. So yeah, COVID has been a really weird time for YouTubers because, like, in past years, it was never that big of a deal when people like to throw out theories about things. You know, there have been videos about conspiracy theories for decades, but it starts to get a little bit telling about what they remove and what they won't. Like, have you ever noticed that people who talk about the flat earth theory are still around? There's still plenty of them on YouTube. And I think YouTube is just like, whatever, they're just being dumb, who cares what they think? It doesn't matter, they don't know what they're talking about. But then if somebody comes out with a conspiracy theory, like the government is trying to control us with, you know, the elections or COVID or something, then YouTube is just like, okay, no, you can't talk about that. We're going to ban any discussion about people talking about, you know, government cover-ups and stuff like that. And so a lot of people start to think like, okay, are they banning me because it's actually true and they don't want me to actually spread that information? Because they don't bother banning people who are making stuff up that everyone already knows is untrue. So why would they be banning people for having certain beliefs about, you know, what all is going on? I mean, the past year has been one of the craziest news cycles of our entire lives. And yet there's so many things about it that if you talk about it, you're going to get in trouble. You know, if you bring up this idea, you're going to get banned. If you hold certain views that might be offensive to some people, now you're getting deleted. You know, I think news and politics has really expanded on YouTube over the past few years. But so often there are a lot of people that are like, alright, here's all of the news and stuff, but if you want to actually hear my thoughts or opinions on this stuff, you'll have to go to my website because I'm not allowed to share any of that on YouTube. I think these big tech platforms are trying way too hard to control everything that's on their site. They're trying to squeeze us harder and harder, but the harder they squeeze, the more stuff just slips through their fingers. And this is where we run into a new problem. And that's that whenever something gets banned from YouTube or any other social media platform, it's not necessarily going away. I mean, sometimes it almost seems like these platforms are role-playing as these evil dictators, where it's like, anyone who opposes us, just eliminate them. But instead of actually killing them, they're like, anyone who opposes us, or anyone who goes against the narrative, anyone who's an extremist or becoming an extremist, we've got to ban their voice. We can't let them speak out. But see, the problem with that is when you ban people, you're not getting rid of their ideas. Like, let's say that somebody started a YouTube channel about how they love Nazis or something. I mean, everyone's first instinct is, okay, YouTube, jump in there, just ban the guy, get him off the platform. Okay, we got him off the platform, problem solved, everybody. The Nazis are no more. But that guy is still a Nazi. He's just going to find a darker corner of the internet with other people who also can't share their ideas, and they're just going to have their own social bubble where nobody can challenge any of their ideas. And so, regardless of how offensive some speech might be, if they're out in the open, if they're on YouTube, then it allows for people to go and comment on that, and for people to respond to that. If somebody's coming out and being extremely offensive, I mean, when you just ban them or censor them, you're basically just sweeping it under the rug. And eventually you're going to have a lot of lumps under that rug because you're not actually taking care of the problem. But one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video is because I was watching a video the other day by Nick Crowley. He makes a lot of videos talking about creepy stuff around the internet and just like really disgusting people. And he had a video about this sexual predator who used to make YouTube videos, now makes TikTok videos, about him just walking down the street and just harassing women all the time. And the comments were just full of people saying, oh man, I hope this guy gets banned. We need to get him off the platform. And I mean, naturally, that's what most people gravitate towards. They think, okay, if we just ban this guy, then the problem is solved. And then the guy did get banned, and everyone was so happy, oh, the problem is solved, he's gone now. Except he's still going to be doing it, but now you just don't have the video evidence of it. So if somebody is uploading video of themselves committing crimes, maybe rather than deleting all those videos and not letting anybody see it, you can spread that video around so people will see that and then report the guy so that he can actually just get arrested. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with the whole Daddy05 thing, you know, where that family was basically recording themselves abusing their kids. I mean, sure, we don't really need those videos in the public, we don't need people watching that stuff, but just banning the channel is kind of covering up the kid's cry for help. I mean, a lot of these videos should just be saved and then used in court against the person. But that's pretty much my take on YouTube censorship. It's really just been getting worse year after year, and it's hard to believe that that's going to be reversed anytime soon.